is a country with a lot of talents in the technology side, and it's super young, and like we said just now, it's probably the second largest crypto adoption market. So people know the technology already. The potential I see is how do we make sure regulation and compliance work together to make sure it actually creates the liquidity we want. I'll pass on to the next.
Please, Mr. Ramadan.
Thank you so much. I'm Ramnath Kumar. I'm the president of Stablecoin Ecosystem for ADI Foundation. ADI Foundation is what I call the only sovereign institutional grade blockchain funded by Abu Dhabi. More than that, we host one of the most regulated stablecoins, which is issued by the Central Bank of UAE, called Digital Dirham Stablecoin. We also, I'm sure most of you would have watched Football World Cup. You would have seen ADI Predict Street, which is one of the products launched, the globally first prediction markets for FIFA, which is one of the products. I'm not going to talk about that for sure. I handle the stablecoin on the RWS. Many people ask me why Vietnam. I don't know how many of you know, UAE and Vietnam are the largest trade partners. We are an institutional chain. We run where the money is, where the institutional flows are. And I'm very happy to be here in Vietnam because through this forum, I wanted to build that concept of how the institutional flows, a trade finance, a cross-border payment, tokenization of receivables, how do we make it happen? And I'm very excited about the potential because UAE and Vietnam have signed a SEPA agreement very recently. Very excited to be here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And Mr. Thomas.
Thank you so much. My name is Thomas from the Capital Foundation. For those who don't know what Capital is, right? We're the official independent non-profit steward of the Capital Network. Capital Network has been alive for almost 2 years. Today, it's connected increasing number of institutions. We have a DTCC, Euroclear. Those are actually co-chair, right, for our foundations. Some of the players that you guys may have heard of, like JP Morgan, HSBC, just some of the active players in our chain. Here in Asia, right, I cover the Asia-Pacific regions, right, in our free pay markets, which are getting things started, right? Start with Japan, we're tokenizing Japanese stocks in partnership with Mizuho, right? Nomura, that's the Japanese clearing houses. Moving next door in Korea, we're working with directly, right, with the two biggest financial groups, called Shinhan, KB, which you guys might be familiar with. So for me, right, Vietnam, as a Southeast Asia, has a lot of impact as well potential here to really be coordinated, right, all over the global markets here. So really happy to be here and looking forward to discuss about how we can modernize the financial system in Vietnam.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Please.
How do I speak Vietnamese? Chào tất cả mọi người, em là Vũ Trường Ái Tâm, hiện đang là phát triển kinh doanh tại sàn giao dịch OKX. Hiện tại thì OKX đã có giấy phép hoạt động tại các quốc gia lớn như là Singapore, Úc, châu Âu, Mỹ và một vài thị trường khác. Thì ngày hôm nay đến đây là quê hương của em rồi nên là hy vọng là OKX sẽ mang lại được những cái thông tin bổ ích cho mọi người.
Thank you. And the last one, so please, Mr. Paulo.
Hi, my name is Paulo. I lead partnerships at Kaya Foundation. So Kaya was started by a Korean company called Kakao. So we have a pretty good base in Korea. And recently, anything that runs crypto on another messenger called Line Messenger runs on our chain essentially. So I guess it's a pretty good distribution channel for Asia. So that's an intro on what we do. Why Vietnam? We've actually done some pilots. Like for example, we've done KB to Korean won to Vietnamese dong pilot last December, embedded in the bank app itself. So we think it's pretty receptive. The Vietnamese market is pretty receptive to these. There's a lot of trade going on from Korea, Japan to Vietnam, Indonesia, whether it's commodities or overseas Vietnamese workers, right? So that's something that we really want to take on, and I'm very excited that the government is very fast, very quick, right? And they just started. I know our speaker said it was pretty slow, but trust me, after working with Japanese and Korean counterparts, it's pretty fast. So that's why I'm all in for Vietnam.
Well, thank you. So talk about liquidity. So of course we have to talk about the money flow. So Kelly, your company is a Nasdaq listed company. So what do you think about the point of view from large institutional investor about other Is it too early or is this mature now? So what's your point of view?
Sure. I think that's a very interesting question. I think from my discussion with more than 100 organizations in the past few years, from Europe to US toward Asia, real-world asset is not too early. It's not too early. But the question is, where is the money coming from? Because if you think about the whole investment flow, first you need to have money. Otherwise, you have no source of liquidity to invest. Liquidity is an outcome. It's an outcome of where the money sits and what other products are. And that's where I actually, in our company, we spend a lot of time to invest in Solana and actually work with the ecosystem partner. Because Solana right now is actually processing 30 to 40% of the stablecoin flow. Because if you have the money, then you have the investment, right? So for example, tokenized equities, more than 90% of those tokenized equities are actually happening and transacting using Solana. That is where we take pride of. That is an ecosystem with liquidity. Because you have the user, you have the money, and that's where the liquidity. And in the long term, what we see is the industry going forward is I would say a migration. Think about the whole financial infrastructure is a home, it's a residential house. The house we are living in today is built roughly 60 years ago, which means it's very strong that it's still functioning. And blockchain is a new home for them to move to, and where we see actually a lot of innovation happens. Be that stablecoin that Pat just talked about, and all the tokenization work. This actually happens on this new financial infrastructure, and this is how we are seeing the whole liquidity, money flow, infrastructure story happening in the blockchain ecosystem, especially on Solana.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramana, I know that you are building payment-based stablecoin system in the Middle East. So from your point of view, so which asset will be lead the next wave of RWA? What do you think?
Great question. I think before I answer, I need to put in a disclaimer. I'm a career banker, I was a career banker. I've done transaction banking for the last 20 odd years. What we have seen in RWS and RWA tokenization has always been assets which are lower risk, more liquid. So we've seen bonds, we've seen shares. People haven't moved on from there. That goes back to the main question. What are the investors looking for? The investors are looking for two things. Liquid, which means I want to sell it or reclaim it any given point of time. I don't want to be stuck with this token. Two, what is the yield on this token? While bonds and shares have addressed one part of it, they haven't addressed the yield part yet, right? Because when you talk about 3% yield on dollars, 4% yield, people will say, I might as well put it in bank account or FDs and I get the same money. That's where, as ADA Foundation, we started looking at it from a different perspective. And I put on my transaction banking cap on. Do you know when SME supplies to a large corporate, the large corporate pays back the SME in 90 days, if you're lucky, 120 days to 180 days. You know what SME does? They go to banks, if they are lucky and banks approve them, and they get lending in dollar terms for 18 to 24% a year. That is if the banks pay. If the banks don't pay, private credit is about 3% a month. What we have done is we went back to the buyers and we told them we want to run an anchor-led supply chain. And guess what? We took all these receivables. We now have 11 mandates we're working on across different types, and tokenize these receivables and actually go to the investors and now tell them these are bank grade assets. These are not wrappers. These are proper bank grade. That's why it's very important, not just the liquidity, the structure of how the fund and the bankruptcy remote SPV works is very, very important. And I've had these discussions with your VIFC guys, with your local regulators as well. There is immense opportunity for Vietnam because Vietnam coffee suppliers supplying to the buyers in UAE, why do they need to wait for 90 days or 120 days to get their money back? We can actually tokenize this.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Paulo, so I want your question. So we have money flow, we have access,
Yes.
and we need real application. So from your point of view, because you are the one who are building the ecosystem of application, so what do you think? What has to happen for Android to reach everyday user by real application? So not only financial products.
I thought you were punishing me because I was talking to my seatmate. Yeah, but I think two things basically. So right now it's institutional, right? I think that's the first part that businesses have to adopt. After that, will likely be retail. So as you mentioned, our approach is more with the retail, right? So two things. One is distribution. So accessible, right? So our friends here to be there. It has to be easily redeemable, right? Like what Teddy said. So that's the one, obviously. Number two is distribution. It has to be hyper-locally available. So the trend now that we've seen in crypto, for example, is we have had Telegram come in. We've had other chains and exchanges come up with their own messaging, or retail-facing apps. A lot of them failed, right? So we have learned that we introduce this technology into the hands